on your program you have a packet of seeds. And somewhere today, I'd like you to cast those seeds. You might not have a plot of land that you own, okay? And if that's the case, when you're driving home, take the seeds, put them in your hand, and throw them around on the freeway. I've mentioned this before. Every spring I talk about this. I had a convertible, and I lived in Southern California, and every time I went over the grapevine, I would throw poppy seeds. And for years, there were poppy seeds along the grapevine. And then I didn't live there anymore. And that's what was going on. Was I wasn't the only one, because I had spread this poppy seed. And the Antelope Valley is known as the place to go to see poppies. And I had grown up in there. And so for me, it was so great to be spreading them out. And just everybody here today, if you start throwing out seeds, we're going to have more flowers than you can believe. And you can drive by and say, look at God and I planted a garden. So that's what we're doing. But before you start planting a garden, when you really are into gardening, what do you have to do? You've got to get the soil ready. You have to turn it over, you have to do all these amazing things, put a little bit of fertilizer, do all of that. Well, what happens emotionally for spring? It's time for you to get ready to plant that garden. And a lot of times people feel stuck. How many of you found this year you feel kind of stuck? Any of you do? How many of you are a little bit upset about the politics, about the guns, about the things that are going on?
You think?
Anybody? Well, that's called being stuck. You're stuck in the gut. You're stuck in the gut.
That's a rap song right there.
Yeah, right. There you go. Go, Janet. And being stuck in that gut, who put you there?
We did.
Yeah, you did. Because you looked at these things that are going on that you can't change, and you let them change you. You let them pull you down. And what you have to do is say, wait a minute, I can change what I can change. And everything else is just gut.
Reverend Dottie, would you say what you just said? That was a profound statement.
But you can change anything you can change.
What you said
Everything
before
else
that.
is just gut.
Right.
I don't rewind that well, Jan.
It wasn't something written down, so.
What do you
Okay, I'll
You can
I've got it on
paraphrase
tape, I've got it on tape.
Got it on
But it's a
tape.
profound statement of something about you let it change you.
Yes, you do. You
That was
do.
so profound.
And I see this happen to people who are very positive, very loving, wonderful, and that's most of you in this congregation. And yet you watch something on the news, and all of a sudden you are right there with somebody that got shot on BART. You're right there with them because you're sympathetic, empathetic beings. What can you do to change? You can't. But you can work with all the people around you to make sure they understand what they're doing just by your example. You don't have to go in to say, you're not doing right in life. People tend to resent that. But you can glow. How many of you know what that means to glow? Smiling, saying hello, giving hugs, throwing kisses. I'll tell you what a friend of mine did that I thought was amazing. Every time she got out of her car, she blew kisses around it so it was to be protected. She just went. That woman got kissed by strangers more than anybody I know. People were just, oh, she's all puckered up, but walk, just give her a little kiss. But her idea was if she blew positive white light around things she honored. She did this around her kids when they left for school. She did this around the airplane before she got on. She blew a light around it. Think about that. That is you being in charge and working with what's going on. But what you see on the television and you hear on the radio, you quite often can't change it, but don't let it change you. Thank you for reminding me of that. And because when you get upset about other things, you feel sad, you feel sluggish, you feel like life is not worth it. Okay? And then what do? You get depressed. And then what happens? You get sick.
Yeah,
And
mobilized.
you're immobilized. And we see this happening. So we want you to start looking at this. We're gonna do a spring cleansing, spring cleansing, spring cleaning, not all together in one word, of your
I thought that
soul.
was pretty economical.
And the beginning step is to recognize that you've got stuff stuck. Recognize, what is it? Who is it that every time you hear their name you go, ugh?
Let me see.
What is it that every time you hear about it on television you go, oh, no?
Now
What have they done now?
What have they done now? Yeah. What is it that when you see it happening, it really affects you, and yet you don't feel there's anything you can do to change it? That's being stuck in that spiritual gunk. And so recognize this internal garbage. And that's what it is. It's internal garbage. If you're upset with your children, if you're upset with your parents, let it go. Remember, this right now is the one life you have to live. And it's not about living everybody else's life. So think about that. Because, you know, as Magic talked about in her planting emotional seeds for spring, these are what you can do. Because you can get organized, you can freshen up, you can do all these wonderful things, but first you've got to clean up the duck. And so when you think about that, what do farmers do to clean up the gut for the next year? They plow it under.
You know, they till the soil.
They till the soil. Plow under all of those things. And when I say plow under, it's also releasing it. It's not just stuffing it down, but it's just releasing it. Getting ready your spiritual soil, you and who you are, for these new seeds that you're going to be planting. And how many times does your computer pop up with something that you really don't want?
All the time.
Oh,
Yeah, what does it do? Does it get you upset?
Nope, I just said, delete.
Good.
It's
Well,
annoying.
that's what you should do with all of these negative thoughts that come popping up. Go delete. Just push the delete button and say, I don't need to work on that right now. I have lovely people that I'm helping and supporting and being there. And I don't need to right now try and help this person in Michigan that's going through a difficult time. Now, I love the state of Michigan, but you can't heal it. You can bless it, you can send your blessings, but don't let it become part of you internally, because once you do that, then all day you're worried about Michigan, aren't you? Yes. Yes,
Well,
Corky?
one of the things that I remember when I was first talking with Ma, and he says, when you know, we all have our path that we're walking on, and that if you know, you look and there's somebody doing something that you don't like, they're walking their path, but when you're not when you're paying attention to other people on their path, you're not walking your path, so you're not evolving, you're not strengthening your energy, and you're not evolving.
Right.
And so just know that every time that you're judging someone else, you're hurting yourself.
Right.
You're really stunting your growth.
Because you're not moving forward.
Right. So, you know, when you're yelling and throwing popcorn at the TV, you know, you're kind of, it's relieving. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but
Corey has a bad call break.
but you know, minimize it so that you don't spend all your time on somebody else's path.
Right. Then let go of that. Yes, Magic.
What I want to say is I think, for me, number 7 is the most important. If we stop and we look, we really get in touch with, hi there, are you paying attention?
And that's a good one. Look at your,
And remember to choose your attitude, because you do have the power.
right.
And replace your feelings of helplessness, because sometimes we do feel helpless.
Mhm.
And just say, you know, I am empowered and I'm connected with Spirit.
Right.
When I feel I'm connected with Spirit, everything just falls into place.
Yes.
So I have to remind myself to get out of my muck,
Right.
because it's really smelly there.
Yes, it is.
And it works.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me share.
Also, I really resonated with number 3.
Number 3,
stop and energize yourself. Take the time to care for your needs in a way that helps you connect with your feelings, emotions, body, and spirit.
Yes.
And it's like we have to remind ourselves.
Oh, that was a big reminder for me.
Right, and isn't it easy though to be saying very sympathetic for somebody else and not working with yourself?
Exactly.
You just are over there, and it's time for you to bring yourself back. I'm gonna bring up a movie that I've watched now twice, once day before yesterday and once last night. It's called Jumanji, the brand new Jumanji. And in it, he says you only have one life to live. And then it's a crazy, funny, if you want something to laugh at. Kevin Hart and The Rock are amazing together. And but in it, they have 3 lives. And they've got a mark on each life. And when they die, that mark disappears, and they're all now down to 1. And this kid says, we've just got 1 life left. And the other one says, that's all we've ever had is 1 life. And it goes, wow, that's true. We just have 1 life, and it's how we spend it. And how many times have you known people who are saying, I wish I had done X, Y. Do it. Don't say you wish you had. Do it. It's amazing how many things you can do in a lifetime. And so think about that. And Magic, I so appreciate this planting. But let's go back to getting rid of the soil ready, okay? That's because these toxic emotions in your life are the muck. And those toxic emotions in your life are those that you allow to take over. I think I've finally forgiven that one last person that I had was mucky in my life. I finally let it go. There's emotions that I've had that I finally go, that's it. How many of you know about Ho'oponopono?
I love it.
Yeah.
Use it all.
Anytime you've got something that you're upset with, forgive it. Say thank you. And say I love you. You can clear it all up. And it sounds like, well, that's too simple. Do you know what they did to me? What did they do to you? You held on to it. They probably forgot what they did. Have you ever realized that? You're going, do you know what they did to me? And somebody says to this person, did you realize that you ran over Doti Boon's foot? And they go, no, when did that happen? And I'm holding on to it. Every time I limp, I'm going, that person ran over my foot. Whether it's an accident or, whether they meant to, it still hurt. And I'm holding on to that pain. You've got to start letting go of all this toxic stuff or those negative feelings that you might have been holding on to for a very long time. How many of you remember one time when your mother or father either spanked you or yelled at you? How many of you remember that? Yeah. Why? They were being parents. They were trying the best they knew how. I don't care whether they were using drugs or they were on alcohol. They were still trying to be good parents. Release it. It doesn't hurt you at all to let go of all those toxic memories that you've stuck down in that gut. What does it hurt you to say to your parents, whether they're on this planet or not? Thank you for bringing me into this world. I forgive you and I love you. How much energy does that take? It's not letting go of your ego. You're still a strong person. What it's doing is releasing the toxic muck in your system so you can go on. Yes, Annie?
So one of the things that I think people forget with Ho'oponopono is it's not only stating, I forgive you, but it's asking the question, do you forgive me? Because you call them into a circle.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if they forgive you or not. What matters is that you forgive yourself.
Right.
So it's sort of a symbolism of asking that energy or that person or that entity to forgive you, but really it's a matter of you feeling that forgiveness for yourself. Because it doesn't matter what they feel, because you're then cutting a cord with them that takes away that emotional charge that
Yes,
goes with it.
very well said. Yes, Magic.
And that's really true, Anne, because it always comes back to us.
Yes.
Because when you're pointing the finger this way,
There's
the
more coming
green
back.
thing is coming right back.
I was gonna say that too. Good job, Magic.
It's true though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very true.
Yes, yes. Any of you, and when I talk about this, any of you have something you remember that you're still holding on to from, you could have been 5, you could have been 15, you could have been 30, you could have been 60. Something that happened that you just want to hold on to because you feel right? Any of you have any of those? I
You know,
feel
one of the
right.
things that gets me is that you'll be sitting at the stoplight and all of a sudden something just pops in your head that happened 20 years ago. And it's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah, and what happens if you just let it go? Think of yourself as that fertile field, ready to receive anything. Ready to receive new seeds, ready to receive sunlight, but also very ready to receive somebody walking all over you and being negative. You don't have to. You can pick and choose what you receive. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that powerful? Yes, Jen.
A good thing too to keep in mind is that other person is operating out of what they know and the tools that they have at
Exactly.
the moment.
Right. Any of you that do counseling, aren't you surprised? I was doing I want to say counseling, but I was doing a reading yesterday of a woman who's holding on something that happened when she was 5. And it didn't happen to her. I mean, I can understand holding on to some horrible thing that happened to this little 5-year-old, but it's something that she saw happen to somebody else. And she's suffering from PTSD of something that happened to somebody else.
Wow.
I said, can't you release that? Well, I felt so sorry for what happened to her. I know, but babe, it's hurting you, just release it. And so it's not even what happens to us. Some of us hold on to the fear we saw in a movie. How many of you hold on to the shower scene in Psycho? Yeah, what's that, what good is that doing?
Well, I haven't taken a shower in a long time.
At least not while I'm alone in the house.
Yeah, see?
For the longest time, I just left the shower door open when I took a shower.
Yeah, but what do you get from that? That's part of that toxic stuff that for some reason we want to hold on to. We want to make sure we don't let it go. Let it go. The minute that negative thought comes in, and I release you, I release you, I release you. I have found there's a lot of power in saying things 3 times. And so the minute that negative thought comes up, I just say, I release you. And you can say, I release you into God's hands. I release you. I release you into Mother Earth. Whatever, wherever, and however you release it. Just let it go. And you'll be surprised. You'll probably miss it too later on. What happened to that negative anger I had? Hey, it's gone.
Who would you be if you were positive?
Me. I'm positive, you know, it's that positive. Think of yourself as just a positive person. Yeah, Jan.
I just wanted to acknowledge, Reverend Dottie, what you're talking about. The latest research in child abuse and witnessed child abuse shows that people are far more traumatized by witnessing abuse to another person they love than actually experiencing their own abuse. And I think it has a great deal to do with being out of control versus in control.
Right.
Although it seems like we're not in control when we're receiving the abuse, we're dealing with it, we're receiving it. But when we witness it, it's much more traumatic. So the
Right.
PTSI is much more complicated, so I really thank you for,
I mean, because, and it's amazing. And,
Yeah.
but I think how could we teach forgiveness? By forgiving. And what happens if we go up to somebody and say, I forgive you? They'd probably look at you like, what?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Just, I forgive you. And you can always say, and I love you. Because there's got to be a point where this type of stuff stops. And it starts with you. You can stop the anger, you can stop a lot of the frustration. And a lot of it happens because the media has found that fear sells. And so as long as we are buying the fear, they're going to sell it. So start looking at ways to get around it.
Dottie,
Yes.
excuse me, but that reminds me of the story that you told me about your aunt's husband who was driving and hit a child.
Oh, yeah, and my uncle. and he was a Seventh-day Adventist. And he was driving down a street, and he was driving a truck. He was a truck driver. And a young child rode out in front of him on a little tricycle, and he couldn't stop in time. And he was like, oh my God. I mean, horror. And the parents came out, and they called the people that you called when something like that happens. And the mother was sad, and the father was sad, of course. And she looked at him, and my uncle is just weeping and crying hysterically. And the mother said, would you come in and have dinner with us?
Wow.
Wow.
They were Seventh-day Adventists.
They were They were Seventh-day
Yeah, he
Adventists.
wasn't,
He wasn't at that
but he
point.
converted immediately.
Yeah, and he said, and what faith are you? And she said, we're Seventh-day Adventists. And he went, wow. And in his lifetime, he built 20 Seventh-day Adventist churches. He took all of his time and energy building churches after that. Because he said, anybody who has that much faith and where that child is going upon death, I want to support them. And he stopped eating meat, which was the hardest thing. He still had a freezer or a cooler full of beer quite often. He didn't go that far. He stopped eating meat. But how many of us have that much faith? I mean,
You
just,
probably do, you just don't know it.
we just don't know it. Yeah,
Good point,
because
David.
we don't see people expressing it. Instead, we see the other side. Okay, thank you. I'm sure Uncle Howard is saying, yeah, he's beaming. But I want you to start thinking of letting go of your negative feelings. Just set them free. Just let them go. You can put, like little, what are those flowers that you blow, no, not dandelions.
Yeah, dandelions.
Dandelions are the, and they look like little parachutes, off they go. Just think of all these negative emotions, blowing them out. And because you can do that. You can also plant your seeds with a little bit of fertilizer and put a few negative emotions there that you can't hold anymore. Because what Ma says is the fertilizer of life is where all of your negative emotions need to go. And he didn't say fertilizer, but that's okay.
Stuff.
What?
So I used to in San Francisco, I used to go across the Golden Gate Bridge and go up into the headlands of Marin, right there, the Golden Gate. And I looked at the Golden Gate Bridge and down the skyline of San Francisco, and I would shout into the wind, just all my frustration.
Oh, how wonderful.
And say, leave me alone, I don't want you.
And just let it all
And then
go.
when I come back home, everyone goes, how come you're smiling now? I said, oh, I feel good.
Good, great,
It
that is
actually worked.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So, find ways. I like writing it down on a piece of paper, tearing it in little pieces and flushing it down the toilet, and let the Milpitas treatment plant handle all that, You can dig a hole and you can bury it, you can burn it, whatever, but find ways to release that negativity, because what we know is it does. The negative thoughts become angry, the anger starts becoming depression, and the depression starts tearing down your body. So find ways to let it go and release it. And what you're going to find is when you get through with your spring cleaning or spring cleansing, whatever you want to call it, then it's time to plant. It's time to take these seeds. It's time to take all of the seeds that you can find, dig a little place, put them in there, water them, and when they start growing, realize that you took a negative and made it into a positive. And you can actually see that positivity bloom. So as Magic said in her Planting Emotional Seeds for Spring, what is the weight you are carrying around? Walk away from whatever makes you ache. Be yourself. Everybody else is taken. I want to thank you all very much for being here and for joining in. And I want to thank the two little wonderful beings, Carol and Tamara, who are in the back setting up food. That is wonderful. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate it, and we appreciate the food that has been brought. So,
I just want to let people know that in my crock pot has the ham from Sunday, so it has ham and beans and tomatoes and corn and peas and
Okay, and Carol, what does yours have?
Rice noodles with pork mixed in and then Swiss chard on the side, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, yeah. You guys got the same message.
I guess we did.
Yes, I do. Okay, now, each one of you should have gotten a little thing about spring, and I started out with mine because I love it. It says, "Spring is nature's way of saying, let's party," and that's by Robin Williams.
Let's party!
Okay, who else has one they'd like to add? Go ahead.
You can't see Canada across Lake Erie, but you know it's there. Same thing with spring. You have to have faith, especially in Cleveland.
Yes, Ronnie?
In the spring, at the end of the day, you should smell like dirt. Margaret Atwood.
Yeah, Patty?
Spring is a heart full of hope and a shoe full of rain.
Yes, David?
April comes like an idiot, babbling and strewing flowers. Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Who wrote that?
Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Oh, the same as Millie. Yes, Paul.
Written by Winifred Mary Letts. She says that God once loved a garden. We learn in Holy Writ, and seeing gardens in the spring, I well can credit it.
Wow,
Yeah,
That's gorgeous.
yeah. Okay, anybody else? Yes, Kim?
Spring shows what God can do with a drab, dirty world. By Virgil Craft.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Norma?
Norma.
April hath put a spirit of youth in everything, and that was said by William Shakespeare.
Yeah, okay, go Bill. Okay, Mel?
Spring unlocks the flowers to paint the laughing soil.
One more time, that is beautiful.
Spring unlocks the flowers to paint the laughing soil.
Wow, who wrote that?
Reginald Better.
Well, good old Reggie. Okay, anybody else have one? Yes, Carol?
Keep your faith in all things, all beautiful things, in the sun when it is hidden, in the spring when it is gone. Roy Gilson.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, Donna?
Science has never drummed up quite as effective a tranquilizing agent as a sunny spring day. W. Earl Hall.
Oh,
Well, there is
great.
rain.
Anybody else have one they want to share?
Sure.
Eileen, what is yours?
Spring is sooner recognized by plants than by people.
Oh,
Sure, the druid gets that one.
Okay, well,
I got a funny one.
you have, what is it?
Confucius say, soggy rice no taste nice.
My favorite is, spring has sprung, the grass is riz, I wonder where the flowers is. Okay, we've got a doggy in here entertaining.
I know.
Yes, Nicklin is just making his nose
He's
dead.
looking
It's
for
now
people
time.
to just pet his belly.
Say he's broken. Every time you touch him, he falls over.
Yeah, she likes tummy rubs.
Yeah.
Okay, if everybody would please get their donation ready, hold it between both hands.